Hello and welcome to the channel, and today I'm going to talk a little bit about terrain. And no, it's not the type of terrain that goes choo-choo, it's the type of terrain that you put on your battlefield. So this is the terrain layout I've done here. This is actually for a game later today. But before I delve into what the top tips are for putting out terrain on your battlefield for a nice, even, fun game, if you like the content, smash the like button, hit subscribe, and if you want to support me more, you can become a YouTube channel member. There are also links below for the places where I get the terrain from. I'll run through that in a moment. And there's also links for my Instagram, where I normally post pictures of terrain for my battle reports. So if you want to see, the layouts that I do, then you can check out my Instagram. Additionally, if you want to buy paints, brushes, models at a discount, please check out my Element Games link below as well, as that will also help support me. So top tips about terrain. Always think about your deployment when you start setting up your terrain. So there are different ways you can set up terrain. For quite a lot of my games now, I am actually going with like tournament sort of terrain layouts. Not because it's boring, because I've still got nice terrain, I can make it look nice, but because it does make a nice, even, fun game where, shooting armies aren't at a massive advantage, combat armies aren't at a massive disadvantage, or vice versa. So that's the key that you want to do with your terrain. Today I haven't done a tournament layout. I'm doing something a bit more fun, but I'm following the same principles. So always bear in mind your deployment zone. The first thing I always do is put the objectives down, and then obviously keep an eye on where the deployment zones are, so you then know how to work around the objectives with your terrain if you're doing your own custom terrain layout. Don't just whack terrain down, then put the objective markers down and then go, that's that objective marker is not where I want it to be. I want it to be behind that ruin or whatever. If you're doing narrative, obviously you can do what you like and have fun, but I normally like to have evenly matched games, so I like to have a nice symmetrical layout, because you don't want to win or lose a game based on who wins the deployment roll-off and picks the best terrain for their deployment zone. That just makes a very boring game, and you know the result before you've even started. So if you want a nice evenly matched game, check the deployment, put the objectives down, and then think, right, where would the terrain need to be to help the person who deploys in that deployment zone? So in each deployment zone, you always want a ruin near the objective marker. Why? Because then if you want to go in the ruin to shoot out, you're in cover still and you're on the objective. Or if you want to, you can just sit behind the ruin, be obscured, and still hold the objective. And you're fairly safe. That person is going to score points for that objective for most of the game, unless someone's quick enough to get there, deep strikes in, or has some form of indirect fire. So it's always nice for each side to have a nice ruin or something line of sight blocking at the back in the deployment zone near their home objective. Okay. The other key thing is to have lots of line of sight blocking terrain in the middle of the board. Now these can be ruins, these can be boulders, there can be crates in crate positions, sort of stacked on top of each other so you can't physically see through. You can mix and match, but you want some line of sight blocking terrain across the middle of the board and scattered around, not all just one big blob in the middle, because you can just walk around it. Or if you've got one big ruin in the middle, which is a mistake I used to make, you think, oh, that's great, I've got one big ruin in the middle, it's line of sight blocking, fantastic. But then someone would just move into said ruin, and then they could see everything the other side. So it's actually better to have ruins separated, a bit like this. Because then if you walk into this ruin, for example, that one's still obscuring what's over there, that one's still obscuring what's over there, and so on. So you want line of sight blocking terrain across the middle, but not just one big lump. You want it separated. So that not only does that benefit the obscuring abilities of all the other little ruins, it also means you do create little firing lines here and there that you can actually tactically maneuver around to get a shot off at people. So it works both ways, but that's how I like to do it. So for example here, the person in this deployment zone here can hide sort of here, behind this ruin, that ruin, the crates, or hide things behind here. And there's also places out on the flanks that are a bit more open, but there is still cover. You don't want to have, you want it all over the place. So the middle is where you want lots of different line of sight blocking terrains, but you also want other things scattered around the edges. Normally woods are sort of good for putting around the flanks, because they don't get in the way so much of maneuvering your models. And obviously they still get the benefits of cover. So, this person could deploy something in this wood here. Yeah, they're visible, but only really to what's over there. They're not visible to things that are over there because there's ruins in the way, so they're not completely open and they're still getting cover. And obviously it's the same on the other side because it's symmetrical. There's little bits in the corner as well for essentially the same reason. You can deploy something down here. You're going to get benefits of cover from either that little ruin or these woods. But you're only really going to get shot at from what's over there, not from what's over there. So there should never be a place in your deployment zone where if you deploy a unit, you can get shot at by every model in your opponent's army or be seen from everywhere in the deployment zone. That should never be the case. You should always be able to hide if you want to. I'd strongly advise it. Hide about 50% of your army at least, depending on the size of your army. Obviously, if you're bringing, I don't know, let's say guard, and you've got 100 infantry, you're going to find it difficult to hide all of them. But most sort of medium-sized, fairly elite armies, you should be able to hide a big chunk of your force, either behind this ruin or behind this ruin. And even what isn't hidden, it's not going to get hit by everything. So that's key. You got to make sure that the people can hide things in their deployment zones. And obviously, if you have got lots and lots of models or lots and lots of units, there's still things like deep strike or reserves. So you should still be able to hide a fair chunk of what you've got. So that's a bit about terrain in terms of ruins. Obviously, I've got a little ruin on the flanks here as well, which is still obscuring in 10th edition. It doesn't matter how big the ruin is, it's still obscuring, so that will still help if someone's got like a little man hiding behind here on this objective they can't be shot at. Barricades provide cover for infantry as well. So there's a variety of cover near the objectives where you can hide an objective and someone's going to have to come and take it off you, not just shoot you off of it 9 times out of 10, because that's just boring and it benefits shooting armies greatly. Always make sure you put gaps between terrain so that people can move monsters, tanks, knights around the board. They don't have to be able to move everywhere. So, for example, this area in the middle here, that will pretty much be off limits from vehicles and monsters. I've made it like an infantry-only zone, and that's fine to do that for a little area of the board. But there is plenty of places to drive a tank or walk a knight around to get around the battle grid to do some damage. One thing I always try and think of is, what if I'm playing a knights player today? Is he going to be able to move his knights around the board to some extent? If the answer is no, he's stuck in his deployment zone, you've put down too much terrain. Yeah, so a knight should be able to walk over here, easy peasy. Now, they've got sort of like long oval bases, so they can probably go sideways and shuffle down the side here, and then down there as well, and then across here. Things like Bane Blades or Astraeus tanks, they're exceptionally large, and unless you literally plan to face someone who has models that big, they probably won't be able to move down very much, but there still should be a place for them to go. So, for example, if I was using a Bane Blade today, I could put it here, and I could shoot everything over there. Or I could put it over here, and I could probably drive it down here a little bit, and then I've got a few firing lines. But it's not going to be able to get all the way across the battle grid because it's a massive Bane Blade. But the majority of vehicles, monsters, you do need to think about, especially knights players who only have vehicles. You've got to think, like, can every faction in the game put down an army that can maneuver around this battle grid? If the answer is no, you've got a problem. Never overdo your terrain either. So I've got quite a lot here today, but there is also lots of firing lines and spaces to maneuver around. What I wanted to do is put down loads of woods and have loads of trees and make it awesome and cool, and then I thought, nah, less sometimes is more. Make sure there is space, make sure there is firing lines so you can actually play the game. If you just make an awesome looking table, unless all you've got is infantry, you're not actually going to have a fun game. So you need to find a nice middle ground. So that's a bit about models, manoeuvring, things to think about. In terms of where I've got the terrain from, I will quickly run through that. So these ruins, I really like these ruins. I use them a lot. These are from urbanmats.com. There is a link below for them. Why do I like these ruins? I actually like the fact they've got these little sort of edges on the side, so you can sort of jump up, charge through, or stand up there and shoot out. Makes them look quite cool in my opinion, rather than just a flat wall. It just looks a bit boring in my opinion, so I like those for that reason. And they come in lots of different sort of shapes and sizes. You can, you know, position them however you want. I quite like them, they're nice. They're resin, they come pre-painted. The battle mat today, this one is from GameMat.eu, and it's actually a double-sided one. This is my Guard / Deathwatch battle mat. Really nice one. I'd highly recommend battle mats from GameMat.eu or other mats. They do battle mats as well. My other battle mat, which is actually over here, is from urbanmats.com. This again is a double-sided one. Always get double-sided because they're cheaper than buying two separate ones. So that's my Tyranid brown one, and this is my sort of generic battle mat there. So the battle mats from there. The sort of guard pieces of terrain we see, like the bunkers, the sandbags, things like that, come from marchofwar.co.uk. There's a link below for him as well. He's a really nice guy. Did me a nice deal on those. That's really nice terrain. You can either get it painted or unpainted. Obviously, painted's more expensive, but it means you don't have to paint it. And then I've got the crates from GW, of course. And then all the trees I just got from hobby shops and things. And the stones I got from a local DIY centre. Because they're just stones. Like you can go to the beach and pick up stones if you really want to. But yeah, so that's where I get my terrain and things from. If you've ever got any questions about, how you should set up your terrain or things like that, feel free to comment below or give me your thoughts. How do you like your terrain? But yeah, that's my generic sort of thoughts and top tips. Make sure there's lots of line of sight blocking terrain, but not in one big lump. Make sure there's space to maneuver around it and to create firing lines. And also think about where the objective markers are going to be and where the deployment zones are. And don't just go all ruins, it's boring. Even at tournaments they have woods. Just that they don't have terrain that looks this nice most of the time. But yeah, they're my top tips. And yeah, thanks for watching. See you in the next one.